we're in hell or something.
No, it's Hill Valley, although I can't imagine hell being much worse.
Welcome, everyone, to Downtime. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Nicholas Lamar Suter, and with me today, as always, is Commander Lance McMillan. Lance, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Very glad to hear it. Well, glad you can make it. I know that you've been busy, and we've all been busy, and things have been a little strange. We already have a couple of super chats. We got a few things to talk. We got more than a few things to talk about. I will say this because this discussion happened before we even started the show. It was in the live chat, but we've also had the same discussion on Discord. We've had the discussion all over the place, and I've found so that people aren't accusing me of like forgetting that it's now called the Department of War or whatever. That I just put DOD and then DOW after that. It's not called the Department of War. Sorry.
Not until Congress says that's what it'll be called.
Bingo! Congress is the only organization that has the ability to change the name of the department. Now.
Yeah, Hegseth and the Orange God King may decide that that's what they want to call it, and that's how they're going to identify it, but the name hasn't officially changed. It is still Department of Defense.
Yep. Part of me wants to start calling it the Department of War, and I will tell you. So one of the reasons I don't call it the Department of War is an act of defiance. It's like, dude, you don't get to change the name, so fuck off. I like calling it the Department of Defense because I happen to know that's what its name is. But so as a troll, I just like to do it. But the other thing is, part of me wants to call it the Department of War, and the reason is this: republics and democracies have departments of defense. Totalitarian governments, fascist dictatorships have departments of war. And the fact that in his mind the name has changed is really rather significant. And I think people should be aware. Yeah, people need to be aware of the fact that he's calling it the Department of War. So, in as much as it's highlighting the authoritarian tendencies of our dear leader, part of me does want to call it that. But the reality is I'm not going to, no. So... I've not forgotten, I've not misspoken, and on occasion I'll put in brackets DOW just to avoid having to get in that conversation. If Congress changes it, I'll call it the Department of War. I'm not being stubborn for stubborn's sake. I believe in reality. So, yeah, that's it. So that's settled. That it sounds like you're, I mean, as a former...
The flip side of that is Department of Defense implies that its primary function is to defend the homeland from attack.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean attack on the homeland. It means protect the homeland from things that are against our interests.
Yeah.
The moment you change it to Department of War, that no longer applies. You can now attack people willy-nilly just because you feel like you ought to, because, you know, it is a Department of War. It has nothing to do with defense.
Yep. Yeah. I think that's another reason to, well, and that's why, you know, that's why he changed it. And the fact that
authoritarian leaders love having wars because it gets the body politic riled up behind them. You know, we're going to stop those other people.
Yep.
It's a quick way to distract the population from the failings of the domestic government.
Well, if you don't Epstein want anyone to Epstein think about a particular Epstein subject, then what you can Epstein do is have a war Epstein with another country, and the Epstein body bags, even though they Epstein are maybe your own people, Epstein, you can blame the other people Epstein, and people don't Epstein have any idea what it is you're Epstein really trying to hide.
Besides, Epstein was from that other country anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, and I'm curious to know how his distractions are going to work. I'm curious to know how Turning Point was meeting. Megyn Kelly got fried by at least two people that I've heard of, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I think what I'd really like to talk about tonight, you and I talked about this earlier, is the scariest thing that I've seen so far since this started, which was Hegseth saying that everybody in the DOD, every member of the press that works at the DOD, not just the Pentagon, works anywhere within the DOD, which encompasses everything. I mean, by to some extent, this would, I would assume, include the White House press corps, because Air Force One is a DOD plane. So this can be expanded, but at any rate, they're all going to have to, they're going to have to sign a pledge that they're only going to release stuff that is pre-authorized by the DOD. So that's one of the things, but I think that ties into a whole bunch of other stuff. But there was an executive order issued today, and LJ made me aware of this, which I sincerely appreciate. I managed to go through it and his press conference today, which was bizarre, as they tend to be. He didn't even know who was in the room. Oh, the president of Pakistan may be in the room. He's a great guy. Is he here? I don't know. Anyways, I invited him. I said he could come, but maybe he doesn't. But he said a few scary things, implied that criticizing him may be a death penalty offense. So let's get into the executive order. The order was issued today along with a few others. A TikTok one. Wow. Countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. By the authority vested in me by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, I hereby do direct the following. Section 1. Domestic terrorism and organized political violence. Heinous assassinations and other acts of political violence in the United States have dramatically risen in recent years. Yes, but it started on one particular day. I'm curious if he knows. What was it? January 6th? I don't think he's included.
It's too early for terrorists to be out doing things. Come on.
Oh, no, good point. Yeah. No, they were all home.
They wait for summer months.
Yeah. And it is interesting what is included in the definition of political violence. Attack. The attempted assassination of Trump, political violence. The attempted assassination of Nancy Pelosi, not political violence.
Tells you everything you need to know.
Yeah. Even in the aftermath of the horrifying assassination of Charlie Kirk, some individuals who adhered to the shooter's ideology embraced and cheered this evil murder while actively encouraging more political violence. I don't know who that would be, but okay.
The ideology in question was, what four-letter organization was he enamored of? It's on the tip of my tongue. Starts with an M, I think. It'll come to me.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll have to. Yeah, we'll work on it. In time, we'll get Sage on that. And actively encouraging more political violence. Again, I'm curious to know who's been sending ICE into cities and telling them that, the reins are... Anyways, this was preceded by the 2024 assassination of a senior healthcare executive and the 2022 assassination attempt against a Supreme Court Justice, Brett Kavanaugh. Again, some attempted assassinations on the left that he seems to have ignored conveniently here, including the Minnesota attempted assassination of I think it was 20 Democratic members of the Minnesota House.
Those aren't acts of political violence. Those are extreme patriotism.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. And we're just north of the Gulf of America.
Exactly.
Exactly. I'm starting to figure out, it is the control of language that they're starting to exercise is frightening. And this
I mean, it's literally straight out of Orwell's 1984.
I know.
Double speak. Here we are. We're living the dream.
Yeah. Oh, I know. So he mentions, let's see, 2 separate assassination attempts against my own life in less than 3 months took place during the 2024 cycle. Yeah, he is ignoring so many things. Riots in Los Angeles and Portland reflected a more than 1,000% increase in attacks on U.S. immigration and customs enforcement officers. I'm sorry. So he sends the officers to Los Angeles, and
these guys really took a lesson from Baghdad Bob. I swear.
I swear to God. Well, I think Baghdad Bob was less.
There are no American tanks passing by the window. Pull the curtains down, please. There are no American tanks within 1 million miles of Baghdad. Yep.
Oh, he was the only one. I got. Let's see. I got Sean Spicer. I've got Sean Penn Jillette. I wanted to get Baghdad Bob. You know, there is no show in time. They are not the news channel. Fake news. Baghdad Bob. I love him. Maybe. Oh, I'll bet you we could get an AI to do it. Oh,
true.
I am now on a mission. Okay, so attacks on ICE officers have gone up 1,000% since January 21st. I wonder why. Just yesterday there was a shooting at a ICE facility in Dallas. Separate anti-political criminal justice riots have left many people dead and injured and inflicted more than $2 billion in property damage nationwide. Now, this is where it starts to get frightening. This political violence is not a series of isolated incidents, nor does it emerge organically. Okay, so this is including the assassination of Kirk and the assassination attempt on him. It is the culmination of sophisticated, organized campaigns of targeted intimidation, radicalization, threats, and violence designated to silence opposing speech, limit political activity. Oh, dear.
I'm nodding sagely in case anybody was
unclear. Pot, meat, kettle. Every accusation is an admission, or is a confession. Yeah, every accusation is a confession. Change or direct policy outcomes and prevent functioning of a democratic society. A new law enforcement strategy that investigates all participants in these criminal and terroristic conspiracies. Okay, so I just dropped in terror, and we know once he does that, he's empowered to murder people. That's the boats that he's been blowing up. Including the organized structures, networks, entities, organizations, and funding sources.
Let me interrupt for a second.
Please.
Remember that the AUMF has not been rescinded yet. They put a legislative proposal for that, but it hasn't been done, which means if he brands anything a terrorist act, he can employ the U.S. military against it.
And that was the congressional authorization after.
Hey, Democratic Party supports terrorism. Boom. U.S. military could be directed to arrest and eliminate every Democratic official in the nation.
Yep. Yeah. Let's see. Well, and he got very scary in his speech. We're not going to play too much of that because I'd rather have a conversation about it than play it. But he mentions people by name that he's going to go after. In a very mafioso, he is really. So These campaigns often begin by isolating and dehumanizing specific targets to justify murder or other violent action against them. I'd like you to keep that in mind, because that's gonna be relevant in a minute. Dehumanizing specific targets to justify action against them. Notice he does that with everybody he doesn't like. We'll get to that. They do so through anonymous chat. Let me in case of several ice. There's common motivations. These terroristic activities occur under the umbrella of self-described anti-fascism. Now, this is interesting because this is the first time he's recognized Antifa is not an actual group. Antifa just stands for anti-fascism. So if you're anti-fascist, you're Antifa. But in recognizing that, what he says is these movements portray foundational American principles, i.e. support for law enforcement and border control. Anyways, as, quote, fascist.
Where does it say that in the Constitution? I don't recall.
Yeah. To justify and encourage acts of revolution. So what he is suggesting here is anybody who uses the word fascist is attempting to encourage acts of violent revolution. He's getting very close to making the word fascist either a hate crime or just illegal to say, which makes you wonder, why is he afraid of the word? This anti-fascist lie has become an organizing rally cry used by domestic terrorists to wage violent assault against democratic institutions, constitutional rights, and fundamental American liberties. Common among these include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity. Support for the overthrow of the United States government, extreme... Says the guy who on January 6th... Jesus. I'm trying to figure out... can somebody figure out how many times I can drop an F-bomb before we just get demonetized? Because there is a limit. The group, the United States. So basically, he suggests that it's actually all one organization. He suggests later that the National Joint Terrorism Task Force shall coordinate and supervise a comprehensive national strategy. They're going to start prosecuting individuals engaged in acts of political violence and intimidation designed to, and he's already said that basically using the word fascist is essentially a terrorist act. You watch,
they'll extend it to anybody going to a protest.
Yeah.
That's intimidation.
I think you're right. I think that's going to be next. He lists a number of things, but includes conspiracy against rights. So political violence, terrorism, or conspiracy against rights. That last one is cute because nobody has any idea what the hell that means. People who sponsor and fund these events, fund these institutions, he's going to go after them. Non-governmental organizations and American citizens residing abroad, or who are engaged in money laundering, funding, or creating or supporting entities that engage in these activities. He's going after all of them. Let's see. The Attorney General shall ensure that domestic terrorism priorities include politically motivated terrorist acts such as doxing campaigns, swatting, rioting, looting, trespass, assault, destruction of property, threats of violence, and civil disorder.
That's the one that's the catch-all.
You did it. You called it. So, protesting can now be interpreted by this executive order as an act of terrorism. Domestic terrorism.
Yep.
He has said, by the way, in a previous order for D.C., that in D.C., and he can only do this in D.C. right now because of the difference between states versus federal rights, but in D.C., in any instance where somebody is charged or about to be charged with a crime for at the state level for which there is, or at the district level, I should say, for which there is a federal equivalent that has the death penalty as an option to use the federal equivalent, and the federal authorities will step in and charge federally instead of state. And they're going to encourage the death. So just because the death penalty is an option, he's basically also suggesting utilizing it at every possible. It's insane. It's stunning. Like you said, and organized doxing campaigns, like the ones they did for anybody who said anything negative about Charlie Kirk.
Well, it's an interesting situation because by law, police officers or other law enforcement officials are required to identify themselves by name and badge number. And effectively what he's now said is that if you ask for a badge number or name, you are doxing that individual. Ergo, you are committing an act of domestic terrorism.
That's a really good point. I told you, Dunk, it gets worse. Dunk on you. It was just like, this is for all the. Yeah, this is a.
We are watching in real time the United States slide slowly into an autocratic state. I hesitate to say fascist because fascism has specific issues associated with it, which may or may not be specifically applicable here.
Well, and if you use the word fascist, if you use the word fascist on this air and I end up in the gulag with you, I will find you. Because the word fascist is already now outlawed.
Yep.
The Attorney General and Secretary of Homeland Security shall designate domestic terrorism a national priority and develop the appropriate grant programs to allocate funding for law enforcement partners to detect, prevent, and protect against threats arising from this arena. So he's basically saying we're going to fund and do whatever it takes. So his last national priority was the cartels.
This is a great point to segue into the discussion of the thing with Hegseth.
Yes.
And here's why.
Okay.
If you wanted to employ the U.S. military in roles to suppress domestic terrorism, and remember my statement earlier about the AUMF not having been eliminated, it's still there. Terrorism, domestic terrorism, international terrorism, doesn't matter, it's terrorism. He has the authority, legal authority, to declare that the military will be used in suppressing and dealing with these domestic terrorists. And he's calling in all the heads of the services to make sure that they understand and demand that they agree and support him. That's potentially what's going on. I mean, so we've been trying to figure out what the hell is the purpose of this stupid meeting.
For those who I'm sure everybody knows.
I was not aware of this statement that he's issued. That's something that meshes together really smoothly.
That's scary. So he's called in everybody above the rank of brigadier. That's all the admirals and generals. They are going to have a meeting Tuesday. The government shuts down on Wednesday. There's been a lot of talk of, is the government shutdown going to be averted? I would say the chances are almost zero, and here's why. The Democrats actually kind of want a shutdown because they believe that history will hold true, which is that in a shutdown, basically, it's always the incumbent who gets blamed. So they want him to get blamed. They also don't want to be held over a barrel the way they are being right now with all the conditions for funding and going forward. Republicans want to shut down because during that shutdown, what Trump has said he's going to do is he's not going to furlough anyone. They're going to be firings. He's going to fire huge swaths of the U.S. government. He has done this sort of as a threat either don't shut down or I'm going to do this. But the reality is he wants the shutdown because that's what he wants to do. It's not a threat. He's looking forward to it. So the Republicans want to shut down. The Democrats really don't, but they prefer it to the alternative because they believe he's going to get blamed for it, which he may or may not, depending on how much news we have left after that. So if this meeting happens the day before, they get 1 day to make up their minds as to whether they're on board with this program. Does this sound plausible? And if they're not, they get kicked out.
Entirely possible. If you're looking to not furlough but fire people, and you want to make sure that you keep good, loyal fascists, authoritarians in government, unless you sign this document. And I'll go on record saying I don't think the document is going to be anything as blatantly obvious as, I hereby swear and affirm my loyalty to the orange one. I think it will be something more equivalent to, because that loyalty to him is not legally sustainable. But there is precedent for non-disclosure agreements to be crafted in such a way as to effectively mean the same thing. So if you have them sign an NDA where you will not discuss or render public or personal opinion on these topics, you've achieved the same effect.
Yeah. And
you can't overturn that because almost every major corporation across the country has its employees sign NDAs.
Oh, all right. So, I mean, my guess is we're going to start getting leaks about what's going to happen soon. But it sounds like we're just hypothesizing here. But I think my suspicion from the beginning has been there's going to be some kind of loyalty challenge at this thing, whatever it is, and they're going to start weeding out the.
Okay, that's the case that we're looking at here.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, that's okay. Not worst case, but second worst case. Worst case is he's calling them all together saying, on Monday, we're declaring war against Russia or whatever. I don't think that's going to be the case. That's something you don't need to call everybody to one location to do. There's plenty of very secure DoD networks that you can communicate your war plans across.
Well, and I checked my Signal group chat, and they haven't said anything about attacking Russia. So
yeah, exactly.
We're good.
So I think the most or the worst case scenario, excluding that, is what we're talking about, which is some sort of, we'll call it loyalty oath, to get all the senior personnel to acknowledge he's a divine being. Another possibility is that he's looking to get approval for DoD to eliminate all LGBTQ personnel in U.S. service and or remove women from command positions and or combatant roles, because we know those are two issues that the extreme right have been advocating for quite some time now. So if you want to keep that group in line with you and make them forget about the Epstein stuff, that's an easy one to do, and you can kind of ignore all the blowback you're going to get from it, because in their opinion, those are a radical minority and nobody cares about them.
Well, and if he does both at the same time, it splits the opposition to the entire affair, in as much as it now makes it about two issues, not one. So,
Yeah.
And I don't know that he's clever enough to do it, but it seems to me do both at the same time. That way, people who care about the NDA and say, do you realize what this NDA means? It's actually worse than just the LGBTQ issues. This NDA is important and we need to discuss it. And then other people saying, no.
The social hot button issue is going to be.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. So
divide
now,
the opposition. That's a great thing.
Yeah. So that's do both. Oh, great. I hope he doesn't watch the show and didn't think of it.
And another possibility is, him going to say, hey, look, the U.S. is going to start retrenching. We're going to be pulling back a lot of our foreign deployed forces and our bases in other countries, and downscaling the military because it's a huge burden to the taxpayer. And, we don't need to be shoring up Europe because those bums aren't footing their proper bill, and so forth and so on. And I'm going kind of down a descending order of alarm severity, but any of these are things that we need to be concerned about. But, at what point is it something we need to, all turn out in the streets and declare general strike, or we can kind of go, okay, well, we'll try to deal with this in other means.
Which brings me to the question I did want to ask. I've never heard of anything like this happening before. Are you aware of this ever happening in history?
To my knowledge, no. Now, for it to occur in terms of asking everybody from a specific theater, say everybody in the Pacific Rim, calling all of those people back to talk to them because something's happening, possibly. It would be highly unusual, but I could see it happening. But to call everyone globally back to Quantico and announce that you're going to have them all in one place, that's
now really... I know. And maybe we're not giving them enough credit. Maybe they're going to end up somewhere other than Quantico. But
sure. Hegseth removing himself from DC, where it's all about who can shove their nose further up the Orange God King's butt.
If anybody is really pissed at the U.S., and is willing to make a serious try at it, and willing to sacrifice their lives, because they're not going to get out alive. But 9/11 was proof that if you're willing to pay the price, you can do a good deal of damage. And Hegseth is just like, okay, everybody, I want the most important people in our military. We're going to be in Quantico here, right here. Quantico, that's with a Q, not a K. Just everybody,
and if you know anything about Quantico, the number of places that could serve as a meeting forum for that many people, probably one or two.
Jeez.
So not only have you narrowed it down to which village or town or whatever you want to call it that they're doing it at, you probably narrowed it down to a specific building.
Well, in Quantico, so Quantico has a Marine base, but it's mainly an FBI training facility. So the security,
it's
what's the security like? Okay.
The FBI, the CIA, I don't know about DA, but it wouldn't surprise me that that's where they train their agents. That's one of the things that's done there. It's also a Marine Corps training facility. It's where
and I think the CIA is there
the basic
too,
course, I think it's called, which is where they send their junior officers for the Marine Corps to train.
All right.
My Boy Scout troop got to train there when I was a kid.
Somehow everything makes sense now. I just you have crystallized. Oh dear. Okay. So, so the new executive order, dovetailing with all of that, That's big, and I'm really glad that we got a chance to talk to you today, because the issuing of Hegseth saying he's going to bring everybody in, and
I think that's one of the key things is people need to realize none of this occurs in a vacuum. They're all busily plotting all the different nuances that they can to secure their position as, the only government. Now, the fact that the different branches don't necessarily talk to one another very much, and that includes people, from like Heritage Foundation and the drafters of 2025 plan and everything, that's not a surprise. That's very common in authoritarian states where you have different feuding branches all trying to maneuver and jockey for position. But we need to understand and appreciate that as much as we like to laugh at them and make jokes about how incompetent and bumbling they are, they're not stupid people. They're people who have a very clear idea of where they want things to go, and they're trying to map out a course which will get them to that location as easily, in other words, with as little opposition as possible. But at the same time, to jockey for themselves to make sure that their branch comes out on top.
And you don't need to be a genius to do this. None of the major dictators that I'm aware of in the past had particularly high IQs, and or even the people who got them in power. It takes patience and dedication to getting it done.
Right, and the key is never undersell how clever they can be.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, one of the greatest weaknesses that the opposition has right now is we keep, writing them off as ineffectual imbeciles who don't know what they're doing. Well, between the German general staff and the German industrialists, I'm sure they all thought the same thing during the Weimar period of a certain Uncle Adolf, who, they all discounted him as, he's never going to amount to anything. He's just a mouthpiece. We can control him. Yeah,
and
sure.
That was in part how he was elected, too, because he was thought to be too stupid to really do anything crazy, and because he was the kind of guy you'd want to have a beer with. That was they literally, you could go back and find the statements of like the interviews where they said, "Oh yeah, he's the common man," who, by the way, just for I know we've said this before, but this is worth noting, had been in prison previously for trying to overthrow the government. So there's some parallels here that are striking. Well, what I'd like to do is take almost a little. Here's the thing, and it is scary. By removing the press, at least the non-loyal press. It almost is kind of an NDA kind of thing. It's basically like you will not say anything that the DoD does not permit you to. I mean, this is the interesting thing about the because I do want to talk about this, and then we're going to talk about what he said today at the White House, because that dovetails with all of this. But so. This is what's called a preemptive, or not a preemptive. Oh shoot! I'll either have to look it up or just go without it. So it's an injunction before a news organization. So a news organization has something that they would like to release, but it's an injunction before they release it. Now, the United States tried this with the Pentagon Papers. Now, the Pentagon Papers is the benchmark for journalism and how and why it is so important. So, do you remember the name of the leak in the Pentagon Papers? I could
not offhand.
Hold on. It's worth getting his name because he
They
put a
called
lot
him
on the line.
Deep Throat, but I can't remember who it was.
Deep Throat wasn't the Pentagon Papers. Deep Throat was
Iran Contra.
yeah. So the Pentagon Papers. Let's see. It was okay. So McNamara. This is during the Vietnam War, and McNamara decides that this looks like it's not actually going well, which he doesn't understand. Daniel Ellsberg. Daniel Ellsberg. So he decides that maybe the war is not going well, so he commissions a top secret report. It ended up being from
the Rand Corporation, so a private think tank.
Yep. It took them. It ended up being a 47-volume study.
Yeah.
And it essentially said that the U.S. made huge mistakes in Vietnam, that no president had been willing to do what it took to get out of Vietnam because none of them wanted to be known as the guy who lost the war, that there had been a campaign from the beginning to spread misinformation about the number of deaths, and also the escalations that presidents, in an attempt to win the war, had been doing, including starting secret operations to kill civilians, use chemical weapons, all of this other stuff, which was not being told to the public. And the conclusion was the U.S. could not win the war. I'd also like to just say hi to
utterly
Maudie.
and absolutely unwinnable, no matter what we did at that point.
Yep. So this is the conclusion given to Defense Secretary McNamara.
That's fairly early when that study is done.
So Ellsberg, who later, when discussing this, pointed out that the reason he blew the whistle on this was because by this point, if you've already been told you've lost, you leave, you get out. But instead, no president wanted to do it, so they continued to lie and say things were going better than they were, and continued to escalate with illegal activities to try to win a war that had already been declared unwinnable. And he didn't want any more Americans to be killed, so he gave...
I'd stop and say, add one point here.
Please.
When it was first released, McNamara read it and said, I don't agree with this. I want you to redo the study. And they came back, and if anything, it was even more damning than it was the first time. So at that point, they knew they were throwing good money after bad. They were killing Americans and Vietnamese for no purpose other than the administration didn't want to look bad.
Yep. Exactly. That, and the reason that's important is because it was free press. There's a reason freedom of the press is number one. They were killing Americans for one reason. They didn't want to look bad. That's all. That's it. It's the only reason. So Ellsberg decides this isn't going to be stopped unless the public stops it, so he releases the papers to the New York Times. The New York Times decides that they're going to release pieces of it over time. They can't release, it's a huge thing. They go over it, they verify it, and they start to talk about the contents. And they say, we have an internal report from the U.S. military that says this war is unwinnable, and that they have been killing civilians, that they've been attacking innocent villages, and that Lyndon Johnson lied. Lyndon Johnson had said he was not going to expand the war to include northern Vietnam, but he had already made plans before coming into office to Gulf of
Tonkin incident.
Yeah, Gulf of Tonkin. Here he was expanding the war, killing more Americans for whatever personal reasons he had. The government sued, to try to block this and say, look, this is top secret documents. They cannot release these documents. And they said, freedom of the press, yes, we can. And in what is considered, it was New York Times v. United States to release the block, and in what is considered probably the seminal decision made by the Supreme Court on freedom of speech in a 6-3 decision, they let the New York Times release these documents, and these documents ended the Vietnam War and saved a lot of lives by exposing the corruption tied to Vietnam. I mention that because at this point, Trump has murdered people. And I have a hard time saying that because I get concerned about like the legality of making a claim like that. But I've spoken to a good number of lawyers by this point. And I've spoken to you about the rules of engagement. And the fact is, he ordered the military to blow up civilian boats that were fleeing and unarmed. That's called murder. That's just what it's called. I can't do anything about that. So he's murdered a number of people by this point. We know because we have a press that has been able to get the footage, and because he's been actually releasing the footage because he thinks it's a good thing. But if it starts getting painted poorly, he's not going to. And if he starts attacking Americans, which is what this this executive order starts to set up, the ability to use the military to engage civilians by calling them terrorists for any act of civil disobedience.
Yep.
Back to the 60s, turning hoses on protesters, except instead of the National Guard, it's going to be the Marines. Instead of hoses, it's going to be bullets. And instead of civil rights advocates, it's going to be anybody on the left. Does that sound like a fair characteristic of what this looks like?
Potentially, yes. But it even has, in my mind, greater ramifications in that if it comes down to that and then resistance springs up, at that point, you're kind of saying and enshrining the fact that that's going to be the new normal. And you have a succession of left, slant right, left, back and forth governments who are fully subscribed to, I can use military against my civil opponents. And that's how you end up with the situation you have in a lot of Central American countries, for example.
I've always wondered how that, because I've heard about that, like they're constantly like one side gets then the other side and they're all shooting. So, oh God, yeah. I did not want to learn by example. That's assuming he can't rig
back generations. It has less to do with actual politics. It's almost family feuding, Hatfield and McCoy kind of nonsense in some places. Because, this family hated that family and they ended up and, I got elected to president. Okay, we're having a coup to eliminate you. And then flip the coin and it goes off the other way in a couple of years.
Yeah. That is it's hard to imagine that the left isn't going to take advantage of this if they get in power, feeling justified by what the right has done. Yep. It's very hard. That's why Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was one of my favorite people, was because that he didn't think that way. He was just like, no, nothing justifies it. But there aren't that many. We don't find that many leaders like that. And when we do,
you end up with a situation very analogous to what happened in the later stages of the Roman Republic, where it was the same kind of families feuding against each other, different factions aligning with each other. And the only way all of that was going to stop is by somebody saying, no, I'm the emperor and I don't like any of you. Off with your heads.
I think that was the lesson of Romeo and Juliet, to be honest with you. But
among other things, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it was a love story. I think it was a political story. But at any rate, all right. So what we're going to do, we are going to play a segment from his signing of the executive order early today. Then I'm going to do the super chats because I have been neglecting those. But I think it's been an important conversation. So let's bring this up. And this is him signing. He has just finished signing the one saying that the death penalty will be vigorously pursued in D.C. Okay, that's scary. And let's at the federal level, because I don't think D.C. has it at the local level. And this is how he's going to do an end run around states that either do not have the death penalty or have it for very limited usage if the federal government has it. And now he's just going to expand how it's applied in the federal. It's federal takeover of the state. All right, here we go.
That he'll be in trial for years, years, years. He'll get a good lawyer somewhere along the line. Somebody will come along, and what he did to that young lady, and she went into that train scared. You know, when she went in, the way she sat down, she was scared to just be there. She just wanted to not pay any attention to anybody, just not be noticed. And she had her throat slit. We don't want that in this country anymore. We're not going to have it in this country anymore. Thank you very much. Next.
Lastly, sir, this is a presidential memorandum on countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. In recent weeks, months, and years, we've seen a tremendous upsurge in some highly visible, but also other acts of domestic terrorism and organized political violence being perpetrated by radical, politically motivated groups all over the country. What this presidential memorandum will do is set off an administration-wide response to that, ranging from the Joint Terrorism Task Forces to other components of the Department of Justice, to the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Treasury. We're looking at interdicting these groups, preventing them from performing acts of violence, and also looking at sources of organization and funding and support that prop them up and allow them to do the acts that they have been doing.
We're looking at the funders of a lot of these groups, and you know, when you see the signs, and they're all beautiful signs made professionally. These are
okay. I'm gonna try not to cut this off too many times, but note, while this and we talked about it in the memo, the first thing he said is we're going to look at the funders, the people who are funding Antifa, and he's going to bring up some names.
Aren't your protesters that make the sign in their basement late in the evening because they really believe it? These are anarchists and agitators, professional anarchists and agitators, and they get hired.
And I'm going to stop there too. Professional anarchists. Professional.
Well, I mean, you can go back and point out something else. He says the Joint Center for Counterterrorism. That's a military organization. He just told you point blank right there.
Jesus,
the plan is to use U.S. military forces against domestic terrorists. He didn't even try to hide it.
I didn't realize that was a wow. Yeah, Adam Rounds just said there's his martial law. Yep, it's hidden. It's hard to see, but that's what this is.
100%.
By wealthy people, some of whom I know, I guess, you know, I probably know them. And you wouldn't know it. You're at dinner with them, everything's nice, and then you find out that they funded millions of dollars to these lunatics. Steve, could you say a couple of words?
Yes, Mr. President. This is a very historic and significant day. This is the first time in American history that there is an all-of-government effort to dismantle left-wing terrorism, to dismantle Antifa, to dismantle the organizations that have been carrying out these acts of political violence and terrorism. What we have seen, if you look at whether it be going back to the riots that started with Black Lives Matter and all the way through to the Antifa riots, the attacks on ICE officers, the doxing campaigns, and now the political assassinations, these are not lone, isolated events. This is part of an organized campaign of radical left terrorism. It is structured, it is sophisticated, it is well-funded, it is well-planned. There is really no parallel like this to anything else in the country right now.
All right, now this is all absolute hogwash. This is utter bullshit, and it's extraordinarily dangerous because, what he's basically saying is it's all one organization and we can take it out and yada yada. And you're right, yeah. Megyn Kelly was at
And now the whole reason for calling the Joint Military Command, senior staff together.
Yep.
It's to get them to agree that this is what they're going to do, and if you don't, you're fired.
Yeah. And
that's what's going on. We don't even need to speculate anymore.
So that's terrifying. So he's going to basically he's going to starting with the admirals and generals. You're either on board with this program of attacking, quote, domestic terrorism. And he said, okay, there's never been anything like the violence on the left. Megyn Kelly was called out at Turning Points today and by somebody who said, look, Kirk was for free speech. He was for transparency. There was a government website. The DOJ did a study that found 5 times as much violence, bodily harm, murder by right-wing terrorists than left. How can you say that the left is the biggest problem? And she was like, nope, fake news. That's not true. She said, once you eliminate the crazies, once you take out the crazies, it's all the left. And I was just like, wait a minute, no. Once you take out the crazies, there's no violence. So what the
once you take out the crazies, there's no right-wing movement.
Shit. Oh my God. Yeah, so to them, if it's violence on the right, it's a crazy person. If it's violence on the left, it's part of a conspiracy against the Fuhrer.
Yep.
I mean that's what it is. That's what they're saying. That's what this argument is here. And yeah, on Tuesday, they're going to get the whole military on board with that.
There is an entire system of feeder organizations that provide money, resources, weapons, and when they're attacking ICE officers, they're attacking federal buildings, or they're isolating public officials for harassment, doxing, intimidation, and ultimately attempted assassination. It is all carefully planned, executed, and thought through. It is terrorism on our soil. Because of this executive order, Cash and Pam are going to have the tools they need, working with Scott, to take these organizations apart piece by piece. And the central hub of that effort is going to be the Joint Terrorism Task Force, or JTTF, which sits inside the Federal Bureau of Investigation. But for those at home who are worried about terrorism in this country, they need to understand, because of President Trump's strength, because of his vision, because of his leadership, we are now going to use the entire force of the federal government to uproot these organizations root and branch. And again, that's only possible because of President Trump and his leadership.
We didn't go that nuts after 9/11. We didn't hand Bush that much power after 9/11.
No. And the key is at least Bush and his gang had to go through the kabuki dance of getting it approved by Congress. These guys aren't even making any effort to do that. They're just unilaterally declaring it.
Yeah.
So in effect, we've transitioned, if we're using the Rome analogy I brought up earlier, you've transitioned from Republican Rome, where the Senate actually had power, to Imperial Rome, where the Senate was simply an organization that existed for wealthy families to pretend they were more important than everybody else. It had zero actual political power.
Thank you, Steve Cash, please.
Yes, as Stephen was saying, Mr. President, thanks to your leadership, crime is going downward in a tremendous fashion, and that's what we want for every city in America. And the FBI's premier flagship enterprise, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, are honored to lead this initiative with our partners at Treasury and Homeland Security, because our citizens are being attacked by, as Stephen said, organized violence, and it's being paid for, not by them, by other people. So what we are going to do, combining forces as Scott and I have done in these last few months, is follow the money. People and organizations have collected funds and put them out into the streets of America and organized violence across our country. And thanks to your recognition of this and this executive order and the AG's leadership to lead out and prosecute these individuals, we are properly going to chase them down like the domestic terrorists that they are, and our streets and our communities are going to be safer.
Talk about fake news.
I'm sorry, what?
Talk about fake news.
Yeah, and I like the domestic terrorists
Literally,
they are.
there's no foundation for any of the crap that's coming out of his mouth.
All of this is utter. Yep.
Yeah, this is Goebbels spinning in his grave because these guys have got him beat by a mile.
Yeah.
TTF and the FBI and Treasury and DHS and DOJ are going to combine forces like never before to root out this new evil that is perpetrating our criminal activities across our societies. And we are just so thankful for your leadership and recognition of it. It's not easy to do.
Good job. Thank you very much,
Who
Pam.
specifically do you want to target?
What?
Besides Antifa, is there a specific group or person you're targeting in this?
Any organized group,
Any organization?
any organized group who is
It
committing,
is.
who are
What is
committing
it?
these crimes. And
It
we're
is.
working with the Secretary of Treasury. You know what law enforcement has told us under President Trump's leadership? He's taken the handcuffs off law enforcement. They can do their jobs now, thanks to you, President Trump, and that's what's happening. And all of these agencies
Yeah, she's aware she hasn't had a turn to speak yet, and she's on camera.
Yeah, that's all this is I got to have my turn in the sun.
that Cash mentioned, we work
I don't wanna
hand in
watch it.
hand together.
Please.
Our prosecutors
I want to watch because Trump is gonna say something.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're following the money with Treasury. We're working with Homeland Security, Cash's agents, all of our agents, DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshals, combined.
There's most of them have left, but the few shops that are open, they just use plywood and just. But I will tell you that these are bad people, and they're paying a lot of money,
Bad
millions of
hombres.
dollars. But take a look at Portland sometime. These are
Let's see if I can
wild.
find the-
Let's see you defend them, Jeff.
No, I'm not defending anyone. I just want, so that we can just explain this in our stories, could you name a couple?
You don't explain it right, though, Jeff. Go ahead. Let's go. Maybe let's give you another chance. Go ahead.
Antifa, Soros,
Yeah.
what names are we talking about?
Well, Soros is a name certainly that I keep hearing. I don't know, but Soros is a name that I hear. I hear a lot of different names. I hear names of some pretty rich people that are radical left people. Maybe I hear about a guy named Reid Hoffman. Somebody's a pretty rich guy, I guess, and I hear about him. I don't know. Maybe could be him. Could be a lot of people. We hear the same names, but they're bad, and we're going to find out. And if they are funding these things, they're going to have some problems because they're.
You mark my words. If this is taken to its logical extreme, we're going to start seeing Democratic elected officials being marched off to prison
Yep.
by year's end.
So that was the
That blatant.
yeah. Right. The fact that he mentions several names, and he does
On my
it in
hit
that
list.
mob way again. Well, you keep hearing these same names. He hasn't heard. These are just rich people that he knows that haven't given him, haven't bent the knee to him. So it's the fact that he was
George,
willing
if you give me a couple $1 billion, maybe I'll take your name off the hit list.
off the yeah. And if you don't support any left-wing causes ever again, don't support the ACLU, don't support don't support Habitat for Humanity. It's So the fact that he was
Arbor Day
willing to,
Foundation, you name it, anything that his cronies don't like, that's on the enemies list now.
yep. So he has the same thing that happened with Jimmy Kimmel, and it didn't take long with the we maybe the affiliates do something so that we, the FCC, don't have to do anything. Trump has literally just said, well, I keep hearing George Soros. I'm just saying the task force is going to have to look into him. And now they're going after Comey. They're going after it's the fact that he can mention one of the richest people alive just like that on air. And with the documents saying they're going after the fine. I mean, I'd be terrified if I was George Soros right now.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Dunk on you, $20. And sorry, I think Dunk has already left. I think we missed Dunk, but I wanted to keep the flow going because this is I wanted the just salt to be done, and I think we've done it. Apologies for forcing people to go through that, but I thought was important. Going to do it now. Pretty serious day. Heg Seth Comey. If what I said earlier in this video turns out to be true, it's going to divide the country greater than anything in the history of the Republic. Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava и Spasiba Большое. Duncan, you also gifted 5 memberships. Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our members. I really appreciate our members, especially now. We are doing our best to keep up with this and to stay on it. So the memberships help, the Patreon helps, and I think mainstream media is in very big trouble right now. The New York Times, we have talked about, especially because of the Pentagon Papers, but for any number of reasons, has been the paper of record. They have not been doing a good job with Israel, and they are in trouble with Trump. So we're gonna see what happens. But this is, and right now we're up. So that's it. Any final thoughts before we go?
I know what I'd like to say, but I won't, because who knows what that might engender in terms of reaction for, oh, you're supporting domestic terrorism. I'm not being facetious.
No, it's,
and that's exactly what they want. They want us terrified. They want us scared, unwilling to stand up to them.
Yep. And it's what you and I had talked about it. They've done it so incrementally. And that's the way, when I knew we were in trouble. I knew we were in trouble a while back, but I knew we turned a corner.
The obvious question is, why now? What is the specific event that's forcing them to take this step right now?
I'd say
I don't see any pressing urgency for it.
Distracting from Epstein and the shutdown, unless you had something else in
well, the shutdown, perhaps. In that case, it would be a preemptive way of distracting from the shutdown. But honestly, Epstein really isn't front page news anymore. It's still there. It's still, gurgling around in the background, like, your proverbial case of the runs that is still waiting to exit, but it's not that big a deal. So, yeah.
Well, I meant the shutdown gives them cover and ability to operate without as many people watching, and to fire loads of people and to use the shutdown as leverage. But I do apologize. I became distracted there for a minute. Something else came in. So you're saying why now on the executive order, or why now on
all of it? We've kind of, I think, done a good job during the show today of putting 2 and 2 together and showing where this is very likely to lead, where they're trying to push things. Again, my question is, what requires them to do it right now? They could still be doing this in one of their incremental, kind of below the radar horizon ways that people would kind of just let it slip and nobody would pay attention. But all of this put together right now, yeah, everybody's going to sit up and take notice. So something is going on that's forcing their hand at this point.
Could it be Putin?
It could be. It could be Putin's putting the screws to him and say, I'm tired of your crap. Yeah. I'm going to release this, and your political career is over unless you do something about it.
And or if he knows the Heritage Foundation is no longer enthralled with him and wants him out, if he can consolidate power and or a health issue, I suppose.
Well, I will point out one thing, and that's that Miller is, to a fairly significant extent, a creature of the Heritage Foundation. So even if Trump goes away, Miller's still there. Miller is perhaps not the architect of the plan, but certainly the guy who understands how to implement the plan. You know, like his his visual look-alike, he's Heydrich and not Himmler. He's the guy who's busily trying to figure out how to execute the plan, but he didn't come up with the plan. That came from a higher authority.
I did love your Goebbels reference earlier. All right.
The playbook for this kind of maneuver, for transitioning a democracy to an autocracy, is there's so many historical cases of it that you wonder why people don't catch on that it's going on.
Well, that's what I was thinking. You said all of this at the same time. Well, a lot of people, and my understanding is people at the Pentagon are concerned because they don't know what's going on. Some of them may be putting it together because they actually have training. You have training, and you have training on the history of how this has happened. Most of the rest of us are sitting there just sort of trying to get by day to day, and people sit there and say, well, I detest Trump, but, you know, he'll be gone at the next election, and yada, yada, and all of these. How many people are putting it together, I don't know. I saw Jimmy Kimmel's speech when he returned, and I think he's got a very good grasp of exactly what's going on. And so do a number of individuals. But if that, I don't know that that's enough to alter the course of where this train appears to be going. I don't know. All right. Well, so though, anything else for final thoughts before I quickly read this article?
Nope.
All right. So this article, I will say it looks a little suspect. I'm not sure, but I'm going to read it anyway. U.S. ambassador threatens to tariff, annex, and bomb Canada if anti-American sentiment doesn't improve. Ottawa, U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra has vowed to improve anti-American sentiment in Canada, no matter how many illegal tariffs, forced annexations, or literal bombs it takes to do it. Quote, I'm disappointed that I came to Canada, he said during a public event in Halifax, a Canada that it would be very easy to target with 500% steel tariffs, or one Patriot missile aimed at Parliament, I might add. The ambassador said, we need to take a tone and tenor of debate down, and by we, I mean Canada. Because you all are weak losers who would be better off as the 51st state. Then after expressing frustration over the lack of pro-American sentiment among Canadians, he clarified that comments made by President Trump are completely different. You pathetic soy boy Canucks. I'm going to say that this is probably not legit. When our own glorious President Trump, long may he reign, threatens to kick Canada out of the Five Eyes intelligence group or economically annex your crappy country, that's what comes. It comes from a place of love, he added, while kicking a live beaver.
Sounds like the same logic and line that a spousal abuser would use.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love the morale will... wait, the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Or as we used to say in the Navy, liberty will be suspended and food rations doubled until morale improves.
Yeah. I'm definitely starting to suspect this article here. Let's see, what was it? When I was Trump's ambassador to the Netherlands, which is also a complete shithole, I had a lot of success illegally fundraising for radical right political groups. he recalled, while whipping Tim Hortons donuts at the crowd. Tell me, who do you have that's to the right of Maxime Bernier? Yeah. So there you go. It's an onion. It's actually the Beaverton. So the Canadian humor doesn't all translate, but I thought that was funny. All right. Well, thank you, Commander, very much for joining us. I was looking forward to this, and we've been sort of in communication most of the day anyway. Thank you to the audience and all of our supporters. Come join us on the Discord. We do have a copy. I dropped a copy of this in the live chat, but we also have a copy in the Discord. Thank you, Louis Highsmith, gifted 5 memberships. We really appreciate that. Again, it really does help, and we thank you. I appreciate that. So we are set to, and UTV and Ham gifted 1 in-time membership. So thank you, good sir, for your continued support. I think Dylan Burns is up right now, so I'm going to quickly check if he is. We can send you all there, unless there's something else. Oh, well, you know what? Mark Reed, I'm going to send you to a smaller channel, Mark Reed. He's a good guy, and he's talking about fundamentalists and fundamentalist interpretations of the Bible. So I will send you there. Hopefully, you'll have a good time with that. He get you out of the news for a little bit. So off to Mark Reed. Thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you. Any breaking, we'll see, probably like during the credits. Absent that, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, with Isandering, and then next week, once again, with Commander Lance McMillan. Have a good night, all.